In this video, I'm going to explain why you might want to use Microthemer with Astra. Microthemer is a point-and-click live CSS editor for WordPress in the form of a plugin. Once it's installed, you can go to the Microthemer interface using the top toolbar, and then that will load our Astra theme. The point-and-click features mean that you can literally target absolutely anything on the page, from the header right down to the footer. So I'm going to target this heading here, create a selector, and say reduce the font size, increase the font size, etc. Change the font family, maybe change the casing to capitalize, and we can even do things like animate the text to come in, slide in fast or slide in a little bit slower. And so the way it differs from when you customize the style changes with Astra and the customizer is that with the customizer you typically have, so for instance with the footer, if you look down here, you can maybe just set the background color or the font color, but if you wanted to change the font size, you would maybe, you wouldn't have the options here, so we can just do that with Microthemer. Let's maybe make the font size just a little bit smaller, not that much, there we go. Because with Microthemer, whenever you select something, you've got about 150 styling options, and you can target anything. So let's just exit here a moment, and I'm going to go to the menu and just show you some of the advanced features as well. So I'm going to click on this link element here, and if I expand the advanced options, it will show me the HTML of the link highlighted here. So it does this for any element you hover over, by the way. And the nice thing is you can use it to navigate around and just to review what classes have been added. If this is something, if you're more familiar with HTML and CSS, and this will be really important, kind of an indispensable tool. And if you're learning, then it's also quite useful because you can just have this open as you're editing things, and you can actually learn a bit about what's going on under the hood. And so what I want to do here is change the color of the link that's active. So we're on the home page. That means it's red to tell us that we're on that page. And so to do that, over on the right here, by the way, you've got these numbers here tell you how many elements in the page to target. So if we wanted to target all of the menu items, I'd use this option. But we just want this element here. And I want to tap into that current menu item class so that whichever page we're on, it will always target the currently active menu item. So I'm going to create a selector for that, and then let's just make the font color a little bit more readable, make it a little bit lighter, like that, and maybe set it to bold. And so the reason Microthemer is particularly suited to Astra, you can use it with any WordPress theme, by the way, but the reason it works really well with Astra is that Astra integrates with page builders like Elementor and Beaver Builder, and so does Microthemer. So we can launch Elementor either using this option here or the view menu here. So I'll just do that now. And then you can use both programs at the same time from a single browse tab. So we can edit content. It's coming events. Hooray. So I can change the text here, and then if I target the element with Microthemer, I can say, I don't know, maybe make the font style italic. And the other thing you can do, which saves you time compared to making style edits in Elementor, is that you can style multiple elements at the same time. So here, let's say I want to change the shadow color that's been defined in Elementor. I could do that here by changing, say, the offset here. But once I've just settled on a new shadow style, I'd have to repeat it here for this image. And so with Microthemer, we're going to use the option that we discussed earlier, where I'm going to choose the option to target both elements. Create a selector for that, and then go to the shadow options, and I can maybe increase the blur so it looks a bit more like a regular shadow. But now that we've made it big, let's also just make it a bit more, the color a bit more subtle by decreasing the opacity. So moving on to layout, that's another area where you've got some good behavior outside of the box with Elementor. So for instance, if I go to this container element for these 3 columns, we can see that that's been defined using Elementor's structure options here. And you get some responsive behavior for free here, where if we go down to a certain width, then we will, where are they? Yeah, we'll suddenly switch to one single column. But arguably, it'd be nice to actually adjust the layout a little bit at this interim point here. And we don't have an option for doing that with Elementor. So I'm going to use Microthemer's layout options. So CSS Grid is a great option here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a selector for the container element, and let's move up. You get quite a few different divs inside divs with Elementor, but so just for reference, it's always the one that says Elementor row, which is the container element for the columns. So that's one we want to target and then change the display value from flex to grid. And what that's done is created, by default, just 3 rows. The first thing you want to do whenever you're adapting an Elementor column structure is go to the All tab, which refers to all of the items, and set the width to 100%. That way they will fill the width of whatever grid structure we create here. So to create exactly the same as what we had before, I've just dragged this thing out here over to the right to create 3 columns. But we could say have 2 columns like this. And in fact, that might look better if we say use the top row. We set the text area to span 2 of the columns, and we just let the images have their own column here. And now things are looking a little bit better on this tablet screen size. If we go to mobile, then maybe at this point we could actually let the images have their own full width row. And so let's set the width to just 1. And there we go. And in fact, something you do when you're adjusting the layout for mobile, it's good to set the grid area to auto, because that way everything because before we dragged the top text area over 2 columns, so it just resets that so it'll stay in the 1 column that we've created for the grid. So that's basically how you work with grid, but I just want to show you a little bit more because we've only had 3 boxes with this real world example. And so I've created some dummy boxes here. So let's create a selector for the container element here. And then we can create a 4 column or a 3 column just by dragging this thing around. And let's also create a little bit of space between using the column gap option, which is super useful. And I'll just add the same amount of space for the row. While I'm on the All tab for all of the items, I'm also just going to set some padding to make this a little bit neater. And then we can just drag any kind of interesting structure we want. So you can make columns span multiple rows, which is really difficult to do with Flexbox designs, or multiple columns like we have here. We can make specific rows overlap, so I can just drag this across, and then now the 2 and the 1 are overlapping. And if we go to the, we've got this option here where we can define like z-index or column widths for the individual items, and I'm going to set the z-index of the 2 to -1, and then it appears behind the 1. So this is really nice when you've got, like, say, images and you want to just have some text that's overlapping over the front. So yeah, I don't want this video to be too long, so I think that's all I really want to discuss for now. One thing I would say, hopefully it's kind of clear that with Elementor and Astra by themselves, you can do a lot just using the UI that they provide and the styling options. But maybe there's a final 10% where you're a bit stuck because there isn't a UI field, and maybe you don't know CSS, so you can't do the customization yourself. So Microthemer can help you bridge that gap. Speaking of people that do know CSS, by the way, you can change, all of the CSS that Microthemer generates, you can edit here. So I don't know if we wanted to maybe set this, this one to 2, move that there. You've still got all of the editing control. You can just lean on the UI for style options you're not maybe quite so comfortable coding by hand. or just if it's a bit quicker. The way Microthemer works is it creates a single CSS style sheet, which we have here. It overrides its default theme styles in a kind of non-destructive way. If you disable Microthemer, then the styles will no longer appear and you get the default ones. You're free to update your theme. It adds important to styles by default, just to help beginners who may not know about CSS specificity. What that does is it basically just ensures that your styles do override the theme. But if you know what you're doing, you can just set this option to no. That's what most developers do. And if you know Sass, then you can also enable support for that. That's useful if you want to work with Sass mixins, functions, variables, kind of advanced stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's everything. So if you have any questions, please do leave them at the bottom of the video. Thanks a lot.